morning. Welcome to Sacred Enzyme. I'm Stacy. I hope you're doing well today. So today I want to talk about this little very special, extremely special book that I got from my grandmother. My grandmother trained in Toledo, Ohio in the 1970s at a church there. And this was the manual that she was given. And it's called the ABCs of Spirituality. And I'm going to talk about this book, and I'm going to talk about all the things that I learned from her that have to do with integrity of the spiritual work, and how serious she was about this, and why I am the way I am is because of her. So this story begins in Toledo, Ohio in the early 1970s. My grandmother trained with the spiritualist circles that were there. And they took ethics very, very seriously, very seriously. Toledo at that time was heavily shaped by immigrant families. There were a lot of Polish people, Eastern European, and working class communities that were there. People who lived close to the consequences of what had happened in history, guys. You know, you had all the stuff that happened with Germany and the Vril Society and Maria Orsak, I don't know how you say her name. But my family, you know, they were very spiritual. They were involved in, my grandmother lived through the Great Depression. Her brothers all were in the World Wars. So, you know, my family had a very close connection with this type of, you know, this type of environment that was going on. All of my grandmother's brothers went to war, and one of her brothers, Bud, he never came back. His body was never returned, and after that loss, my great-grandmother was never the same. She lived on, but something was gone from her. And she died not long after she lost Bud. He was like her favorite son. My grandmother always said, she used to always say, my mom, she loved my brother Bud so much. And after he died in the war, she was just never the same. So that kind of loss just changes a family forever. So ethics was really important when the spiritual movement started kicking back up in the 70s, because they'd been through a whole lot of stuff that was all tied up with spirituality. And that's not a mistake, right? If you can make people think that being spiritual is a bad thing, that it leads to atrocities, right? Then everybody's like, oh no, woo woo woo, oh no, woo woo woo. You know, I've been dealing with this kind of stuff for my whole life. I've been called a voodoo, a woo woo, a weirdo. You know, I'm like Teflon at this point. It doesn't even bother me. By the time the 60s and the 70s arrived, people understood something very clearly, that belief systems, when unguarded, can be dangerous. After the Holocaust, after the war, after seeing how ideology and authority could override conscience, many spiritual communities made a deliberate choice to become more grounded, and, you know, they felt like spirituality needed ethics, accountability, and discernment. And right now, there's a lot of that that's lacking in the spiritual movement that's happening right now. It's not because spirituality is dangerous, but because unguarded spirituality can be misused, guys. And this is what's been happening. My grandmother was a stickler, absolute stickler about this. She was very clear about not entangling money with spiritual authority. She had zero tolerance for fraud, and she could sense when somebody wasn't genuine like a mile away. She was really good at reading energy. And that's not judgment, that's protection, guys. Messengers and guards is what I want to talk about, because there's two different kind of people in spirituality. You've got your messengers and you got your guards, okay? My mom is a messenger and I'm a guard. The messenger can't be the guard because they can't stand in the spot and be a protector. They can be a vocalizer, okay? They feel, they transmit, they speak, and they open channels. Some people are guards, though, like me. They hold boundaries, ethics, and responsibility. And both of these two things are necessary. They are absolutely crucial, but they're not the same role. My grandmother knew that my mom could be a messenger, but she also knew that she couldn't be a guard. And so I was trained accordingly. My grandmother trained me accordingly. So My grandmother knew that when my great uncle Bud left to go to war, he told the family that he wasn't coming back. He wasn't coming back, that he planned on dying, that he was going to get himself killed over there. And he was just unhappy with his life. And, you know, it adds another layer to this whole scenario about, you know, my grandmother being part of a family that didn't understand their own spirituality. Kind of like I was in a family, my brothers understood nothing about spirituality. I was like the odd nut in a box of bolts, you know. So it's just an unbearable weight of understanding that someone didn't know their own worth or their own purpose. And, you know, both of my brothers have passed away out of the third dimension. They know that they have a purpose now because they can see through the veil. But when they were here, they would hear none of it. They would hear absolutely none of it. So, you know, remembering that despair when unseen can be fatal. It can be fatal. And belief systems must never ignore human care. So this legacy is not for everybody. Doing this is not for everybody. It's not. It's for the women in the family who are willing to take on the responsibility. And I was one of those. Responsibility to protect others from being exploited, to keep ethics central, to refuse spectacle and hierarchy, to ground spirituality in nurturing, loving, and care, and to help people remember that they matter. This isn't about power, it's about stewardship, guys. You know, let's not get a big head. So this work isn't about belief, it's about safety, discernment, and care. The whole point of spirituality is to bring us back into a state of coherence where we understand what we're here for, what we're supposed to be doing, that we're celestial beings here, having experience in physicality. And we're all hemmed up in constraints. We're in polarity. That's the whole point. So the standard that I was given is the one that I'm carrying forward. And so I want to share this book because it was published by the Stowe Memorial Foundation in Summit, New Jersey, which existed specifically to educate the public and protect spiritualism from distortion, fraud, and misuse. This foundation worked closely with the Natural Spiritualist Association of Churches, called NSAC, NSAC, a federation of churches, and it still is around today. At the time this book was being used, the NSAC placed a strong emphasis on ethics, accountability, discernment, and responsibility towards the public. And so if you see down here, it talks about Cassadaga. Cassadaga wasn't just a destination, that was the training ground. So my grandmother trained within this tradition early in the 70s, and she took ethics very serious. She worked closely with another woman named Catherine Saki, who was a Polish immigrant from a Polish immigrant family. And, you know, that was a real old guard environment. So I want to read this book with you and tell you how they looked at things in 1970, when they were very much involved in the whole ethics of spirituality. So we're going to start with the first part of this. The ABCs of Spiritualism. 100 of the questions most commonly asked about spiritualism, answered tersely and plainly. B.F. Austin, AMDD, the editor of Reason Quarterly. Stowe Memorial Foundation, Summit, New Jersey. Bureau of Public Relations for National Spiritualist Association Churches, the Southern Headquarters, P.O. Box 128, 128, 128. Get it, guys? Cassadaga, Florida. So it says this book belongs to Catherine Benita Royal. And it has her address, 3945 Southwest 103rd Avenue, apartment E201, Miami, Florida. And her other address, 411 Division Street, Adrian, Michigan, 49221. The ABCs of Spiritualism. So here we go. Back in the early part of the 1900s, spiritualism was looked upon by Christian religions as insignificant, fanciful, and unreal. However, Those with the courage to think for themselves sought after an explanation of spiritualism. B.F. Austin, editor of the Reason Quarterly, published a pamphlet in 1920 entitled The ABCs of Spiritualism. The world has since, in understanding and spiritualism has become real significant. The press, radio, and television have aroused an interest in psychic phenomenon, neither confirming nor denying it, leaving it to the mental capacity of the individual to accept or reject. These presentations have aroused an interest in the study of spiritualism as a religion, and in answer to the many requests received to the Stowe Memorial Foundation of Summit, New Jersey, dedicated to the development of spiritualism, has published a reprint of Mr. Austin's pamphlet, The ABC of Spiritualism, and it is my hope that it will serve the public well. Email C. Reichel. Number one, what is spiritualism? Spiritualism is a science which affirms the existence of spirit as the origin, sustainer, and reality in all the forms of nature and in all the expressions of life. According to its teachings, the universe is spirit-built and constitutes a divine revelation of spirit. And they have in parentheses, God. Spirit manifests in all life, in all intelligence, in all power, in all wisdom, and in all that is true, beautiful, and good. Spiritualism is a philosophy which explains the manifold operations of the spirit in nature and in man. It is the religion which demonstrates through mediumship's life's continuity after death, affirms man's divine origin and relationship, furnishes man with the true philosophy of prayer, gives the strongest possible motives to good conduct, inspires and aids man in self-development, and offers him the richest consolation in life's sorrows. 2. Are spiritualists justified in styling spiritualism as a religion? Yes, abundantly justified by its teachings and its effect upon human character and life. Leaving out all the references to the derivation of the word religion, since the derivation of the word is very often lost sight of in its changed use and meaning, isn't that the truth? It may be most positively affirmed that in the accepted use of the word religion today, there are three universally recognized ideas: the existence of a supreme power, the efficacy of prayer, and the duty and privilege of man to come into harmony and peace with that power, not ourselves, that makes for righteousness. Spiritualism recognizes the omnipresence of spirit, finds its manifestations in divine revelations in heaven and earth, in man and beast and rock and flower, and thus the truly awakened spiritualist is ever face to face with God. Spiritualism recognizes the efficacy and value of prayer, explaining in its lucid and inspiring teachings how every expression of man's desire for the true, beautiful, and good causes the soul to mount up on wings like the eagle through the operation of natural law, and how prayers are often specifically answered. It says answered, I think is a typo, answered through the ministering angels and our arisen friends. Spiritualism in all its literature and inspired teachings has ever affirmed the absolute failure of all creeds, ceremonies, and sacraments and ecclesiastical services to bring peace and comfort to mankind until the individual, through knowledge of the truth and loyal obedience to the truth, has brought his thoughts and actions into harmony with the great laws that govern the spirit realm. Salvation from the viewpoint of spiritualism is found only in that knowledge of and obedience to truth which brings man's life into perfect adjustment with nature and with God. 3. When and where did modern spiritualism originate? In the village of Hydesville, New York State, on the 31st day of March, 1848. Number 4. What distinction is to be drawn between universal spiritualism, ancient spiritualism, and modern spiritualism? Spiritualists affirm, and truly, that many of the great leading principles of spiritualism, such as the existence of a supreme power, the value and efficacy of prayer, the belief in the continuity of life, the belief, in many cases, the knowledge of the communications between mortals and spirits, existed in nearly all of the great religions of the world. when these religions originated. Certainly, in biblical times, both Old and New Testament, many held these great leading principles and knew of the open door of communion between the two worlds. 5. Why is the distinction drawn between modern and ancient spiritualism? Because on the 31st of March, 1848, which ironically is my mom's birthday, not 1948. Yeah, actually, I think it is. Holy shit. She is. Oh my God. That's my mom's birthday. She was born on the day this. Oh my gosh. She was born in 3/31/48. Holy shit. Oh my gosh. I'm freaking out here. Because on March 31st, 1948, through the wonderful mediumship of the younger daughters of the Fox family, 9 and 11 years of age, a code of communication was established which opened up a wide door of intercommunication between mortals and spirits. And also because preceding and following this significant event, there was a mighty outpouring of spirit power upon the world, resulting in the development of a large number of mediums all over America, and the general spread of the knowledge that life is continuous after death, and that communication between the mortal and the spirit realm is possible and actual. Number 6, if then spiritualism holds principles and teachings common to other religions, what reason is there for a separate religious body? Has spiritualism distinctive principles of its own? Most assuredly it has. 1. Spiritualism through mediumship offers the world its only present-day demonstration of the continuity of life. Practically, this is to most men a proof of immortality, since it seems impossible to doubt that a man will survive the change called death. Spiritualism furnishes, then, the only firm and stable foundation for religion and morality. It furnishes the highest possible motives for study, development, and a truly moral and spiritual life. Number 2, spiritualism is the only cult that not only affirms the fact of mediumship, but stands unequivocally for its cultivation and consecrated use in the instruction and uplift of the human race. Now you see that it says cult, and then it says cultivation. So, is a cult really being used in the wrong terms? Is a cult a cultivation? Right, like David Koresh. We're going to talk about the Koresh too, because that's in Florida. And boy, oh boy, is that a story. That is some story. That's one spiritualist movement that they squashed out in Florida. Big time. And it was the Koresh. The Koreshians. Number 7. What objections do opponents of mediumship urge against its practice? Well, they say it's inimical to health, often leads to insanity, and tends to immorality. Number 8, what answer to these charges is made by the advocates of mediumship? They point to the fact that the great majority of those possessing and practicing mediumship are healthy, happy, and compared favorably in point of morality and character with any other good class of citizens. Tens of the mediums best known to the writer range in age from 75 to 98 and are excellent examples of happy and useful old age. Mediumship is generally associated with the spiritual philosophy of life, which works out a mental emancipation for its followers from the narrow and pessimistic dogmas of the old theology, inoculates a most cheering optimism that certainly tends to life's enjoyment and to health and longevity. A vast multitude of mediums will testify to the fact that on yielding to spirit influence and guidance through mediumship and becoming acquainted with the cheerful and inspiring teachings of the spiritual philosophy, they have not only found an improvement in health, but increased motives and aid in leading a more spiritual life. It may be affirmed, therefore, and with boldness, that the whole tendency of mediumship unfolded under right conditions and concentrated to the instruction and comfort of the race is towards health, happiness, and the development of a loftier character. That some mediums are immoral, some are sick, some have lost their reason, is no more than can be said of every class of public workers. And that's totally true, guys. What other answer is made to the charges brought against mediumship? Mediumship is in nature's order. It seems to be part of a great divine plan of the infinite intelligence for the instruction, inspiration, and aid of the younger and less advanced souls in God's great family by those of riper experience and richer knowledge. It extends through all ages and through all the realms of the mortal and spirit spheres, and will one day link into communication all the realms of spirit and all the worlds of space, which is true because right now we're in the ascension cycle. And they knew that. They were talking about it back then. The ascension cycle was coming, and they were preparing us all. Like my grandmother prepared me for right now. I am right here because this is right where I'm supposed to be for right now. And I've been from all the ladies. She brings all the ladies. And this was an arrangement that's been in the works for thousands of years with my mother's family line. Mediumship is nature's order. Let's see. All right. Some men and women are born mediums, never having to develop it. And that would be me. I was born a medium. I didn't have to develop it. So, you know, it's I don't really know how to answer people when they say, well, how do you see? Or how do you know? Or how does it get delivered to you? Because there was never a time that I wasn't able to. It's just kind of like some people smell, some people see, you know, some people hear. It was just one of my senses. And so I never really had to explain it. It was kind of like I was a portal and that people would come to me. I was always the channel because I'm a realm walker. That's what I do. I hold space. So all of the beings would come to me. I would be literally like the channel, the portal. So child mediums being found in all lands and ages, and since mediumship comes spontaneously to many in adult life who've never sought it, and even against their wishes and protests, there must be a rightful and beneficial use of the mediumship in human life. Upon what is spiritualism based? That's number 10. It's based on the principles of nature, the facts of human experience, and upon mediumship as the mouthpiece and interpreter of these. Number 11. Is not spiritualism based on the Bible? No. The Bible is so far as it is inspired and true, is based upon mediumship, and therefore both Christianity, the simple and beautiful teachings of Jesus, real primitive Christianity. So they're calling the Bible primitive Christianity. And spiritualism rests on the same basis. Spiritualism does not depend for its credentials and proofs upon any former revelation. Do you hear that? Exactly. Number 12, are true primitive Christianity and true spiritualism opposed and opposing systems? Not at all. Both originated through mediumship. Both teach the spiritual nature of man. Both teach and illustrate the continuity of life after death. Both teach salvation by knowledge of and obedience to the truth. Both teach the intercommunion of the two worlds. The conflict, if any, is between spiritualism and the spurious Christianity of today, which has usurped the place of the truly spiritual teachings of Jesus and is teaching what Jesus never taught and is not teaching what Jesus did teach. Number 12, are any true primitive Christianity and true spiritualism opposed and opposing systems? So yes, it is saying perfectly on number 12 that the Bible today is not teaching what Jesus intended. All right, so let's go on to number 13. What is the relation then between true spiritualism and true Christianity? Each is independent of the other, having its own evidences and proofs, yet buttressing each other, since their claims and teachings are so similar, and their proofs and evidence are essentially one. The proofs by which early Christianity was established were known as the miracles. The proofs of the truth of spiritualism are known as psychic phenomena. These are one in character. They are. Number 14, how does spiritualism and true Christianity buttress each other? Well, in this way, if the early miracles really happened, such as the healing of the sick, the gift of the tongues, the lights and sounds of the Pentecost, the remarkable deliverance of the followers of Jesus, etc., etc., it's evidence they occurred in nature's order, and therefore may happen in our time. If, on the other hand, the psychic phenomena of today are genuine, why should we doubt precisely the same happenings under another name in early Christianity? Right. It's like saying, ignore this, but only listen to this. It's like when people, I love it when people jump on my channel and they're they're saying all this craziness. This is exactly number 13 right here. Do spiritualists deny the existence of the historical Jesus? No. The vast body of spiritualists, including all of their representative writers, accept Jesus as a historical character. They do not deny his miracles, though they hold it impossible to make certain to human minds the happenings of 2,000 years ago. Spiritualists as a body venerate the name and character of Jesus and regard him as the world's great teacher and exemplar, because Jesus was the embodiment. He was baptized, he cleared his energy field, he had a Kundalini awakening, he was able to connect to Source, he was anchored to the divine feminine, which was Mary, his 13th apostle, and he embodied what he was trying to teach. That's what the 13th to 12th, 13th archetype is, my friends. Living in embodiment. Practicing what you're preaching. Do spiritualists believe in the divinity of Jesus? Most assuredly, they believe in all the divinity of all men. Every man is divine, and that he is a child of God. Exactly. And inherits a spiritual, divine nature, just as a man develops his intellectual and spiritual nature and expresses it in life. He is God manifest in the flesh. Since Jesus attained to and manifested in a very unusual degree the divine attributes of spirit, no spiritualist would question his divinity. So number 17, does spiritualism recognize Jesus as one person of the Trinity, co-equal with the Father and divine in a sense in which divinity is unattainable by other men? No. Spiritualism accepts him as one of many Savior Christ who work at different times, who've come up into the world to lighten its darkness and show by precept and example the way of life to men. It recognizes his as a world Savior, but not as the only name given under heaven by which men can be saved. Number 18, from the viewpoint of spiritualism, how does Jesus save men? By his truth and by his life, according to the teachings of Jesus, men become free or saved by knowledge of the truth. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Spiritualism fully accords with this. It holds that the whole duty of man is to find the truth, to love the truth, to follow the truth, and that in doing so, he becomes a free man. As the life of Jesus was a beautiful commentary upon his teachings, even a more eloquent exposition of the truth than his words, as it was, in fact, a living epistle known and read of all men. It is truly said that Jesus saves men by his life. Number 19, does not spiritualism recognize special value and efficacy in the death of Jesus in saving men? No. Spiritualism sees in the death of Jesus an illustration of the martyr spirit, of that unselfish and heroic devotion to humanity which ever characterized the life of Jesus, but no special atoning value in his sufferings and death. The world has uncounted illustrations of men who have died for the truth. All such deaths have a moral value and influence, but not in a sense of a ransom price for the souls of others, as taught by the so-called Orthodox churches. And when we get to number 20, this will be the last question, and we'll continue tomorrow because I don't want to make this video too long. It's 30 minutes. How do spiritualists explain the statement of Jesus, I and the Father are one? They put alongside the statement another of his statements, the Father is greater than I, and find an interpretation in which both are true. Jesus and the Father were one in nature, one in desire, and in purpose for humanity's uplift. And yet, as the infinite life and intelligent and source of all being, the Father was greater than the Son, the foundation greater than any stream that flows from it. So, it's pretty interesting. So far, it's kind of doing a little poo-poo on the way things are, the ways things have been done. So what do you think of this book? It seems pretty self-explanatory to me, but you know, it's interesting to hear the attitudes and the moral obligations that they had. So we'll pick up some more of this tomorrow, and we'll go through this book and read all these questions, and we'll see how it compares to what's going on in the spiritual movement today. So with that, when you come and find me, I'll be here, because we're living in the past, present, and the future all at the same time. I'm so lucky to have this very special book that has all of my grandmother's prayers and her thoughts and her notes in it, and her time of learning how to evolve her soul. So when you come and find me, I'll be here. We're living in the past, present, and the future all at the same time. Have a great day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the videos. This is a non-profit channel, guys. So I hope to catch you on the next one. Have a great day. Thanks for watching Sacred Enzyme. Bye-bye.